Well, it's been 40 years in the making, but now the sequel to the Australian theatre classic Don's Party is on stage in Melbourne, attracting both critical reviews and full houses. Penned by the country's most famous playwright, David Williamson, Don Party's On revolves around another election night party. This time, the 2010 poll that delivered the nation a hung parliament. Well, back in 1971, the original play captured the mood and character of a generation. Now, 4 decades on, David Williamson says he wanted to know where it all went wrong, or right. Gavin Fang reports.
Gary McDonald admits that at first he wasn't altogether convinced about the merits of a sequel to Don's Party.
And all I could see was, oh, it was such an icon, oh, you don't want to go back there, oh, that's a bit dangerous. But this play is hysterical. This play's got such heart too.
If the audiences that filled Melbourne's Arts Centre Playhouse for preview performances are a guide, then theatre goers are ready for another night with Don Henderson and his mates. McDonald slips into the role of Don, a man Australians first met 40 years ago.
Try and act like a host tonight, will you?
Since when have I been rude to my guests?
But a lot has changed.
They stopped having parties. They stopped having parties about 20 years ago because most of the parties were disasters.
Party? This is more like a morgue than a party. Let's hear it.
In the 1970s, David Williamson's play and then the film version of Don's Party became an Australian classic, celebrated for capturing a snapshot of the lives and aspirations of a generation.
Oh, beauty!
It was set on election night in 1969 as a group of 20-somethings gathered to watch the television coverage of the count, with high hopes of a victory for Gough Whitlam.
Most of the parties in the old days were disasters, but for all that, they had passion. We still really cared who won. We still thought a change of government could change the nation. And we laughed and drank wine, not bloody mineral water.
Finding out what happened to the characters was what motivated playwright David Williamson to pen Don Party's On.
When they were in their 20s, when the play was written, their lives were ahead of them. They didn't know whether their hopes and dreams would be realised. In the 60s, they know damn well what happened to their lives, and there's a bit of soul-searching and a bit of competitiveness about how lives have turned out. So the play is as much about how has my life gone, how have my relationships fared, what has life all been about, as it is about the election itself.
The election, though, does provide the backdrop for Williamson to satirise the politics of Australia today. He started writing Don Party's On thinking that Kevin Rudd would win a narrow re-election. He had to do some rewriting when Rudd was elbowed aside and Australian voters delivered a hung parliament.
Totally all you've got to learn is great big new tax. We'll stop the boats and spending like drunken sailors, and you'll have Abbott's complete repertoire.
What about Gillard's Move Australia Forward? She said that 28 times in one speech.
Williamson describes the election result as a bonus for the play, but not the nation, and decries what he sees as a lack of a real agenda in politics today.
The only interesting thing was the rise of the Greens in order to address the big elephant in the room that wasn't there in '69, and that's resource depletion and climate change. The world is facing a much trickier future than we thought it would back then.
While Williamson hasn't spared Don and his mates from the bite of his satire, he has dealt more kindly with the women from Don's Party.
Look, if you think I enjoy being mauled by your randy husbands, then you're wrong. Men are pigs.
In 1971, they were downtrodden and aggrieved. Now they've outstripped their husbands in the work and happiness stakes.
I think David's only reflecting what does happen as you get older in relationships. If the relationship lasts, it usually lasts because the man realises that, he's got to kind of knuckle under a bit.
But at its heart, Don Party's On is about the ageing of a generation and how the choices they made in their youth have had consequences down through the years for themselves and their children.
How could it start so brilliantly and go so wrong? Frankly, mate, and I say this as a friend, You made some pretty poor choices.
Writing the play allowed David Williamson to reflect on his own life's journey.
Well, this is a work of fiction. I just thought, well, I was terribly lucky, in fact, that Don's party did take off. It certainly was crucial, along with the removalists, in establishing me as a playwright. But Don Henderson in the play was not a playwright, he was a novelist. And his novel got published, but flopped.
Williamson clearly hasn't flopped, and 40 years after Don's party, he's well and truly established as a chronicler of Australian life, although he describes that description as pretentious.
Look, I love writing plays. I love this process of getting a play on the page and then the interaction with the actors, who are like an extended family, and the directors, and the final buzz of getting it on stage and seeing a reaction. And that's a buzz, and that's what you do it for. And as long as I'm still alive and people are still coming to the plays, I'll keep doing it.
Where have the safari suits gone?